This is Skywatch Media News for the second week of March 2018. Ongoing changes are happening in the Earth's magnetic field in an area in the Southern Hemisphere known as the South Atlantic Anomaly. This is a recurrent anomaly with strong evidence pointing to a region in southern Africa as playing a major role in a magnetic pole reversal. The last pole reversal occurred about 800,000 years ago. The magnetic field that surrounds our planet protects us from harmful radiation, but the field has been decreasing for the past 160 years at an alarming rate. The weakest region on Earth, which continues to weaken, is an area stretching from Chile in South America to Zimbabwe in Africa, a vast region called the South Atlantic Anomaly. Data collected by a group of university researchers suggests that the core region beneath southern Africa may be the birthplace of recent and future pole reversals. The researchers discovered that the magnetic field in this region fluctuated during 3 separate periods of time, as shown in this graph. The South Atlantic Anomaly, therefore, is the most recent display of a recurring phenomenon in Earth's core beneath Africa, which then affects the entire globe. There appears to be something unusual about the core mantle boundary under the African continent that could have an important impact on the global magnetic field. The magnetic field is generated by swirling liquid iron in Earth's outer core. It is here, roughly 1,800 miles beneath the African continent, that a special feature exists. Seismological data has revealed a denser region deep beneath southern Africa called the African Large Low Shear Velocity Province. The region is located right above the boundary between the hot liquid outer core and the stiffer, cooler mantle. Sitting on top of the liquid outer core, it may sink slightly, disturbing the flow of iron and ultimately affecting Earth's magnetic field. Because the field stimulates electrical currents, a breakdown could have wide-reaching ramifications, including grid failure, navigation system malfunctions, and satellite breakdowns. A breakdown could also allow radiation to reach the Earth, triggering an increase in the number of skin cancer cases. The possibility of a continued decay in the strength of the magnetic field is a concern that must be continuously monitored. The collapsing magnetic field poses a great concern for the world, but there are other concerns that are equally important that require our immediate attention. The intensification of Earth changes is something that has been covered extensively in prior videos. The changes being reported today are indicators of what is about to come upon the Earth and its people. If you keep vigil over the marked changes that have taken place in the past 30 years, or going back to the early 1990s, there has been very noticeable indicators of change in weather patterns, in seismic and volcanic activity, in magnetic disturbances, and in strange phenomena, especially coming from the sky. Before 2012, the extent of Earth changes were certain but fairly gradual. Beginning in late 2012, there was a dramatic increase in the changes, with even further intensification beginning in 2015, when signs appeared in the sky and new and strange anomalies began to take place. In 2018, we are seeing further intensification. It is likely that a pattern may be developing. What is so perplexing about today's events is the sad reality that far too many are unaware of the changes that are happening to the planet. But for others who have been alert and have investigated the Earth change phenomena, they realize and understand that a clear pattern is emerging. The Earth, our Sun, and the entire solar system are being affected by something that most people either do not understand or who have no genuine interest in wanting to know. All of the changes are beginning to reach a tipping point. It began long before the sun entered into a period of hibernation. Something is causing the Earth to wobble more erratically, allowing seismic and volcanic activity to increase. People who live in the Pacific Ring of Fire are witnessing consecutive volcanic eruptions, which they claim has never happened in their lifetime. It could easily be said that these events are unprecedented in nature. The weather is becoming maddening, with catastrophic flooding all over the world. Snow is falling in places where it has never or rarely ever snowed before. Events that were once considered as cyclical in nature are now happening frequently and with extreme intensity. Weather anomalies are now being described in strange ways by meteorologists, pegging these storms as bombogenesis events, thunder snow episodes, land cyclones that dispel a month's or even a year's worth of precipitation. It could be said that these events are unprecedented in nature. Lakes and rivers virtually disappearing, the sea receding along shorelines on one side of a continent, while on the other side king tides are crashing ashore, causing extensive flooding, an indicator of an increased wobble effect. Have you noticed that the seasons are out of sync, arriving weeks before their scheduled arrival? There are many other examples of what we are seeing today, such as massive sinkholes, giant fissures, enormous landslides, blood-red waters, and mass animal deaths. All of these have increased dramatically in the past few years. If you go back about 50 years, you did not see these events happening in such a huge number as they are today, and therefore it could easily be said that many of these events are unprecedented in nature. Another event that can be added to the mix of strange phenomena is the recent report that indicates that the North Polar Vortex split in two, with one part migrating over northern Eurasia and the other migrating over northern Canada or northwestern North America, leaving the Arctic Circle open to a push of warm air. While Canada and Europe are shivering in sub-zero temperatures, the Arctic is basking in temperatures above freezing. Even more bewildering is that the Arctic has been thawing, even though the sun will not rise there until March 20th. The Arctic Sea north of Greenland is now free of ice in the open waters, while Alaska's Bering Sea lost a third of its ice in less than 8 days. The strangeness of what is happening on Earth is unabated. From the looks of it, the North Magnetic Pole has become a dipole with separate electrical charges. The magnetic field is weakening with both magnetic poles wandering. Because of this weakening, there are openings in the ozone layer that drift across the Earth, allowing greater penetration of cosmic ray particles into our atmosphere. Consequently, levels of UV radiation are at record levels in many areas, which are causing illnesses due to overexposure to ultraviolet rays. There are certain elements that are penetrating the Earth in increased volumes, including lithium and helium, which are also affecting the Sun and other planets. There is also an ever-increasing amount of cosmic dust and radiation that is entering the Earth's atmosphere. All of the changes that I have described here today may, in essence, be portents of what is coming our way. With the escalation of Earth changes, it is necessary to prepare ourselves for what will take place in our future. for it is not a matter of if, but when the next major catastrophe will happen. Humanity has dealt with various disasters throughout our existence, but according to leading volcanologists, the world is unprepared for the next major volcanic eruption, and therefore must do more to prepare now for a blast that is likely to cripple trade, communications, and financial systems if nothing is done to organize for this type of disaster scenario. The last cataclysmic volcanic disaster that affected humanity was the 1815 eruption of Tambora in Indonesia, which resulted in tens of thousands of casualties. The eruption led to the year without a summer, both in Europe and in North America the following year, in 1816. According to a paper published in Geosphere, the next catastrophic eruption, which is classified as a VEI 7 eruption, could occur in our lifetime. It is thought that the last eruption of this magnitude prior to the Tambora blast occurred on Mount Rinjani in Indonesia in the year 1257. The explosion was powerful enough to create a centuries-long cold snap, which was called the Little Ice Age. Such a powerful explosion in today's globalized society is hugely important for the entire planet. The way in which to prepare for a powerful eruption is by studying and determining how huge amounts of magma accumulate and then erupt, thus helping to forecast where the next major event might occur. The list of volcanoes that are capable of a VEI 7 blast include Mount Taupo in New Zealand, where a massive eruption happened 26,000 years ago, and another includes Iran's Mount Damavand, which is located 30 miles from Tehran. It is very important to research potentially devastating eruptions so that those in harm's way will be properly instructed on what to do in the event of a major eruption. If you happen to be a prepper, then you are aware that large cataclysms will strike the earth and change the world as we know it. As you are well aware, this could happen at any time. The significance of a cataclysmic volcanic eruption is something that should be on everyone's radar in a time of tremendous earth changes. Volcanic eruptions may have played a key role in the Earth's worst mass extinction, which happened at the end of the Permian geologic period. Earth has actually gone through 5 mass extinction events in its long history, but scientists now believe we are on the verge of triggering a 6th event. The event which happened during the Permian period is referred to as the Great Dying, in which more than 90% of marine species and 70% of terrestrial vertebrates went extinct. It took millions of years for life on Earth to recover from this catastrophic event. Some of the proposed culprits of the Permian geologic time period include an asteroid impact, toxic poisoning from metals such as mercury, a collapse of the ozone layer, and acid rain. All of these hazards are indicative of what is happening in the atmosphere today, as well as the threats that come from space. But it is also a distinct possibility that volcanic activity played a major role in the end Permian event. Recently, a geologist, Dr. Benjamin Berger, identified a rock layer in Utah that may have formed during the Permian and the Triassic period that could help in determining the cause of the Great Dying event. During this period, the Earth's continents were still combined as a Pangea, and Utah was located on the supercontinent's west coast in the region of the ancestral Rockies. Samples were collected from rock layers in Asia near where the volcanic eruptions occurred, but Utah was on the other side of the Pangea, thus providing a perspective on what took place on the other side of the world from the eruptions. Dr. Berger's samples painted a very bleak picture of Earth's environment at the end of the Permian period. His findings indicated that the oceans had become acidic with a huge drop in calcium carbonate, resulting in a massive loss of marine life. In effect, the oceans became one massive dead zone. Like a domino effect, the bacteria ate the oversupply of dead material, which produced hydrogen sulfide, thus creating a toxic atmosphere. The atmosphere then created sulfur dioxide, which then produced acid rain, which ended up killing much of the plant life on Earth. Coincidentally, high levels of mercury and lead were found in his samples, which coincide with the end of the Permian period. For any of our viewers who may be chemistry enthusiasts or who have studied chemistry, then you understand that mercury and lead are byproducts of burning coal. So what is the importance of this? Well, the Permian period was the end of the Carboniferous period, which means coal-bearing. In essence, large deposits of coal were created in the Carboniferous period in places such as Asia and elsewhere, where magma from volcanoes then began igniting coal deposits, which were created in those regions. The coal ignition triggered the series of events that led to Earth's worst mass extinction. Its sulfur emissions created the acid rain that killed forests and vegetation. Its carbon emissions acidified the oceans and warmed the planet, killing most marine life. The dead bodies fed bacteria that produced toxic hydrogen sulfide gas, which in turn killed off more species. The warming of the oceans produced a large methane release, which accelerated the warming of the planet. It certainly is indicative of a chain reaction going from bad to worse, which may help you to understand how vulnerable life is on this planet. Many of the same signs and indicators of what took place in the Permian period are being observed today. There are an increasing number of dead zones in the oceans. Pollution of the atmosphere continues to rise, and the oceans are becoming more acidic. Even more worrisome is the tremendous amounts of methane that are being released from the ocean floor, as well as from the Arctic, where the melting of the permafrost is causing the release of significant amounts of the explosive gas. So the similarities of what is happening on the planet today and what happened in prehistoric times are quite remarkable. In the past 2 centuries, species are going extinct as fast as they did during the past 5 mass extinction events. Once again, we see ourselves on the verge of a tipping point which cannot be reversed once it has crossed the line. When it comes to an event that would have huge implications for the U.S. and much of the world, it would be the Yellowstone supervolcano, which far exceeds all other natural threats. If you're a prepper who wants to know how you could prepare for such a cataclysmic event, here is an idea of what would happen. Yellowstone supervolcano is essentially a giant lid-topped cauldron. Its crater is 45 miles in diameter. It contains tens of thousands of cubic kilometers of magmatic material. If it were to erupt today, it would happen quickly and with very little warning. A sudden injection of new magma from beneath the caldera, or a sudden weakening of the geological layers encasing it, may be enough to trigger a sudden depressurization event, and the entire system would violently surge onto the surface and up into the atmosphere. Here is what volcanologists have theorized will take place during the eruption. Just prior to the event, the ground around Yellowstone National Park would rise upwards. Hydrothermal systems, including the geysers and geothermal pools, would rapidly heat to temperatures above boiling, and they'd likely become extremely acidic, more so than usual. A swarm of earthquakes would be detected making their way towards a central point indicating magma rising rapidly through the crust. Then the roof rock would fail and the eruption would begin. A vast column of ash and lava would shoot upward to heights of around 16 miles. It would sustain itself for days, pumping ash into jet streams that would transport it around the stratosphere. When the eruptive column or parts of the column fail, enormous pyroclastic flows would blast their way across the park. The most dangerous aspect would be the effect of the ash fallout on the globe, which means plenty of homes would collapse under its weight as it accumulates on rooftops. Roads and sewer systems would clog and break down, water supplies would be contaminated, and electrical grids would short out. Millions of homes would become uninhabitable. Those in Idaho, Wyoming, and Montana would be at the highest risk for this type of event. The amount of ash fallout could be up to 10 feet in the areas near Yellowstone, but will spread across the entire continental United States and large sections of Canada. The ash's injection into the stratosphere would cause it to darken the sky and cool regional, if not planet-wide temperatures. If the eruption is particularly sulfur-rich, which is an efficient blocker of sunlight, then temperatures would plummet several degrees to the point where the next few years will lack a summer. The USGS is keen to point out that scientists at this time do not have the predictive ability to determine specific consequences or durations of possible global impacts from such large eruptions. Whatever happens, it would not mean the end of life on Earth. Humanity will survive, especially those who are well prepared for such a disaster. But it won't be an easy road to have to walk when the time comes. This was just a quick synopsis of what could be expected to occur. But maybe it will give preppers ideas if they want to prepare for a Yellowstone eruption. And so our journey continues. There will be many obstacles that will confront us along the way. But if we travel with both eyes open, then we will have a much better perspective of what lies ahead. Regardless of where life may lead you, always remember to keep looking to the sky. From there all things shall be revealed, and from which our expectations will come to pass.